this story yesterday, out of Lebanon, the Hezbollah terrorists, they attacked their pagers, 8 dead, 2,000. Today, it seems that walkie-talkies have been targeted. We don't know if it's Israel, but this changes the whole mindset, doesn't it, of terrorism in the Middle East and beyond?
It does indeed. This has been an audacious attack, no doubt about it. We can only assume it's been conducted by Israel, specifically Mossad.
Underlining that it was the communication devices used by Hezbollah, more detonations today in the last little while across the country, south and in the southern suburbs of Beirut. That is being sourced both to a witness and to security sources. So exactly as you're piecing together, that is exactly what Reuters is also doing. And we had reported earlier that the batch that was being talked about was roughly of the size of 5,000. And we know that yesterday nearly 3,000 people were injured. So we were aware that a certain number of devices hadn't exploded thus far, but perhaps an indication that some of those are also exploding now 24 hours later.
Welcome everyone to the Hurting Humanity channel. The BBC and other quote-unquote media outlets are reporting that a second wave of attacks have taken place over in Lebanon. They're claiming now, as you heard, that walkie-talkies have been activated and are exploding all around Lebanon. Now, I always talk about how the news itself is manufactured and fake, but that does not mean that these events are not occurring. Just the narrative that they give you, and even the devices they tell you that are detonating, is obviously open to interpretation. This is where they usually manipulate the story. Because of social media, we can see that a lot of bombs have been going off around Lebanon. A lot of explosions have been taking place. There's no denying that aspect of what's happening. But what there is denying is what they're claiming it to be, and of course, how they spin these stories. Because while right now they might say that Israel's detonating these walkie-talkie bombs, that Israel detonated pagers to explode, the gold Apollo pagers, which I'll cover in a separate video. It's currently okay to question Israel in regards to the war going on between Palestinians and Israel, between Mossad and Hamas, which are all really one and the same, as I've mentioned many times, because the blueprint for World War III calls for this. So there's going to be people who side with Palestine. There's going to be people who side with Israel. What people should be talking about is how they have the capability to do these things. And what people should really be thinking about more and more every time one of these stories comes out about attacks via technology is what the future holds for people like me and you and everyday citizens who walk around with these time bombs in their pockets called cell phones. So the current story being reported on right now is that hundreds of fresh explosions have just taken place less than 24 hours after 4,000 pagers exploded, killing 12 and injuring over 3,000 people. Of course, they label this as Hezbollah terrorists, but there's a lot of human beings, civilians, children, etc., who are caught in the crossfires of this. They keep the narrative that this is an act between militant groups and that these attacks are directly on soldiers. We saw video of these explosions going off inside of grocery stores that civilians were actually putting out there, inside of apartment buildings. So the notion they want you to have in the mainstream news is that these people are in a cave somewhere or they're walking around in their tanks and these things are going off. There have been children who have been caught in this crossfire. And this war is really about, again, war on civilians, as are all wars. These actual soldiers, at least in these militant groups, work arm in arm with one another. Like I've mentioned, Hamas is a creation of Israel. It's a creation of Mossad. So the fresh explosions are now taking place via walkie-talkie VHF sets, which are used, of course, by the terrorists. We've seen some of the footage that's out there, and they're reporting, as of now, me recording this, that 3 people have died, and many walkie-talkies are blowing up. There are reports that landline telephones are also blowing up too at various locations in East Lebanon. Okay, so what does that make people think? What do you think? Someone's just going up to a random landline and putting a bomb in it? Someone's just grabbing walkie-talkies before they're being distributed to all these Hezbollah soldiers and putting bombs in them? And nobody in Hezbollah checked the actual phone or checked the actual pager or checked the actual walkie-talkie to see if there was a bomb in it? It's because this is microchip technology we're talking about here. They're not putting bombs inside of pagers. They're not putting bombs inside of walkie-talkies. And the batteries themselves are not exploding. Microchip technology, the same type of technology that we have in our cell phones. They're talking about landlines now exploding. According to reports, it seems to conveniently be all this technology that is Stone Age-like technology, right? Because I feel like if they actually utter the word cell phones blowing off, the casual citizens might start saying, wait a minute, what? They have the ability to trigger a bomb inside of a phone? So they're keeping you thinking about old technology, outdated technology. And if, we're going to start seeing stories come out because people are going to cover some of the stuff that I'm covering here who have probably a larger audience than I do. And they're going to start saying stuff about phones, not talking about DARPA, of course, because they don't have a deep understanding of what's actually going on and who's actually capable of doing this and how we actually all have enabled this technology in our day-to-day lives, right? So they probably will put out a lot of disinformation talking about how cell phones cannot do this and how it isn't cell phones over there, that it is pagers and walkie-talkies, because they want us to believe that these people are acting in the Stone Age. Of course, they bring that up because they say, well, they're not using cell phones because they don't want Israel to intercept that, as if they couldn't intercept this. And even if they were that hesitant that they would be afraid to use cell phones because Israel can track their movements, then don't you think that they would at least have the common sense to look at these types of devices to make sure that there's not some type of remote detonator inside of it that could blow up? You don't think that they'd actually do that? We're not talking about a small rinky-dink criminal gang somewhere, a biker gang. We're talking about militias. We're talking about organizations who have lots of money as well. And they're also very, if this is what you do for a living, if you're a terrorist group, and these are the things that you would think about on a day in, day out basis, regular civilians probably would never think to check a device for a bomb, obviously, but a group like Hezbollah would and should. So it's very hard to believe that this technology, which they're claiming they got 5 months ago, they got the walkie-talkies 5 months ago, and they got the pagers 5 months ago. And nobody did any type of a test on it, right? Nobody tested the technology. Nobody put it through any type of, nobody took it apart first to make sure that there was no Israeli spy techniques inside of it. They could put chips just to track inside of it, let alone put anything else in there that could blow them up, right? So we all need to believe that this is actually being done with phones, and they're going to try to make you think that it's not being done with phones because they don't want you to get away from your technology. So today's blast happened across southern Lebanon as part of Beirut suburbs were also attacked. At least one of the blasts happened near a funeral organized by Hezbollah. 4 people who were killed in yesterday's pager blast. Iran-backed Hezbollah said today that it attacked Israel artillery positions with rockets in the first strike at its arch-rival since pager blasts wounded thousands of its members. Israel's spy agency, Mossad, it's not Israel's spy agency, it's the global government's spy agency. It's really Mossad, CIA, M16, they all work together. So Israel's spy agency, Mossad, which is a long history of sophisticated operations on foreign soil, planted explosives inside pagers imported by Hezbollah months before Tuesday's detonations. A senior Lebanese security source and another source told new agency routers. So this morning, Lebanese Health Minister Faraz Abid confirmed that 12 people were killed, around 2,800 wounded. Now the numbers are up well over 5,000. Again, you take that with a grain of salt because the media is never going to give you an accurate number of how many people are actually killed ever in any event. Remember, they claim millions of people died in a specific event back around the day of the guy with the short mustache. Everybody out there who actually has studied it and has common sense logic knows that that number is beyond inflated, and the people actually weren't the people that they claim to be, who of course have a connection to this as well because they have a connection to everything, don't they? So let's look at the narrative that they're giving us. Again, they're giving us the narrative of this technology that is not a smartphone, right? Because if you start realizing that the smart devices, right, the smart devices that we're all bringing in our home, like I've been saying, those devices can be triggered to do this, The amount of frequencies in a pulse signal could trigger a smart meter on your home to explode. It could trigger your cell phone to blow up. Okay, that is there. And don't forget where you might say, well, just a phone? Well, don't they need something to send the signal? Well, what do you think all those towers are that are around us? What do you think all those 5G towers are there for? So you could download the latest Taylor Swift song faster than you could blink? No, not likely, not ever, not the reason that they're actually there. People are literally walking around with something that could be used against them as a weapon that could potentially take their own lives. If I told you to put a stick of dynamite in your pocket and carry a book of matches in the other, would you do it? Probably not, right? But again, corporations and brands and trust, right? That's a common thing we always hear about, trusting in brands, right? Brand recognition. Think about that. And all these brands and these corporations are the ones who fund the military and run our government anywhere, or at least work hand in hand with the government. And really, they are our government, Apple, etc. Like, they all work with the government. They're all one and the same. The corporations are the one that fund the military. So they're the ones who have their hand in all of this stuff, and we're walking around with this in our pockets. But if the narrative that they want us to believe is that Hezbollah got these devices 5 months ago, that's what they're telling us. 5 months ago, they said, we're not going to use cell phones because Israel's Mossad is so intelligent that they could access the cell phones and track our locations. Okay, well, obviously they can do that. They don't even need your cell phone at this point to track you with a lot of the other crap that they're spraying from the skies onto people's bodies. But let's just say, hypothetically, that was the mindset of Hezbollah. So they say, we're going to order pagers, we're going to order walkie-talkies, we're going to go back to an old school way of communication, right? And they say, okay, let's find a trusted company. We're going to use this Gold Apollo company, right? This Taiwanese Gold Apollo company. Don't think about the connection with Apollo here, which again, I'll cover separately, but we're going to use this company, right? That's what we're told that they did. Nobody out there thought for 3 seconds, hey, we should probably do tests on these to make sure that they haven't gotten to these companies first, since they are Mossad, since they are, the all-seeing eye that they see and know all, and they hear all these conversations anyway that they think they're having offline, right? We're going to stick with our payphones, we're going to stick with our walkie-talkies, and we're going to stick with our pagers, and then they're going to blow everything up with those, and you didn't run any tests on any of that stuff, right? Why would they be blowing up landlines? You know what I mean? They're blowing up landlines now. So we would have to think, okay, so now you're telling us that the pagers are from Apollo, right? Gold Apollo we're getting the pagers from, and the walkie-talkies. Where are the payphones coming from? That's what they're saying. They're now reporting that payphones are also exploding, right? One has to wonder if this is the beginning of a transition into moving away from cell phone. Remember, I've talked about this. There's got to be stuff that occurs that get people away from the phone in their hand. Now, you might say, well, how in the world would they convince somebody to remove the phone from their pocket and then put it inside their body? Well, if they can convince people that men could have babies, and if they can convince people that 5-year-olds should be castrated, you don't think they can convince you that it's perfectly safe to get this stuff embedded in your genetic code? They'll tell you that it's unhackable. Though all it takes is a little propaganda. They can convince these sheeple of anything they want. So don't think for a second, even though you'll hear that and you'll say, wait a minute, so you're telling me that they're blowing up phones, they're telling us they're blowing up cell phones, then they're going to convince people they can put cell phones inside the body? Don't underestimate what they can do. Don't be MAGA. The MAGA crowd underestimates the intelligence of Mossad and the intel groups. They think all these horrible false flags that they do are done on, because they're incompetent. They're like, oh my gosh, this is the shooter you're going to give us? This guy? Oh, how dumb is the CIA? That's not what they're doing it for. They know that they're baiting you with this stuff. These people just give them, look at them as if they don't even know, that they don't have self-awareness. Their intelligence is so deep, and every little thing that they do and every little move that they make is so intricate, right? So we can look at it and we could say, well, how are they going to convince people of that? But there has to be something that is done that convinces people to move from cell phones to actually getting this stuff implanted, this technology implanted, whether it's an actual implant or whether or not it's just some type of, nano shot that could get people to have access this type of technology and interface in their blood automatically, and then see this stuff. Because remember, I talked about Elon Musk with the Neuralink. He's talked about how the Neuralink is not a procedure that you have to cut your head open with, right? You don't have to get your head cut open like you're in the movie Hannibal. You could literally have it injected in you, and the interface is then injected into your body, and you could access the interface, right? So that stuff is what we're headed towards, but don't think that it's out of the realm of possibility even to start hearing stories about moving away from actual phones in your hand because of stuff like this. Maybe that's why they're starting to leak this type of information out there. They don't need to tell us any of this stuff is happening unless they want to tell us that it's happening anyway. So we see video out there of a lot of these explosions in lots of random places. They're telling us that it's this old school technology that's doing it, which would mean that they would need to put triggers in all this old school tech, and it would need to get past security, as in Hezbollah's own security, as if they don't look at these things, as if they ordered it on Amazon, right? They called the Gold Apollo guy, and they're like, hey, could you send us some pagers? And then they got a box cutter and opened it and just started passing them out. Was saying, hey, do you think that maybe they could be working with Mossad? And this is common sense logic, right? This is what anybody would do especially if you're in the midst of war or you're a terrorist organization. So they would obviously check all this stuff after they received all of this stuff before they put it in everybody's hands and distributed it. But they don't want you to think like that. So now they're claiming they have a huge breach of their communications network. The initial report suggested that the pagers were made by a Taiwanese company, but the firm continues to deny it. The Taiwanese pager manufacturer Gold Apollo said that the devices were made under a license by a company called BAC, which is situated in Budapest, the capital city of Hungary. Though Israel has not commented on the blast, it had said that it is widening the spectrum of its war with Hamas and Gaza to include its fight against its ally Hezbollah. Israel had made this statement hours before the blast on Tuesday. There was actually a tweet that was sent out. Remember, I mentioned in the previous video that I did, where even one of Netanyahu's right-hand man, messaged something out on Twitter right after it occurred, pretty much admitting to guilt of this, and then deleted the tweet. All right, they do that stuff by design. Everybody knows once you tweet something out, it's out there. People screen capture it, and then you go and delete it. It's like an automatic admittance. You admitting guilt, right? That's a common thing that we see a lot of these intel groups and these intel agents do. They tweet stuff out, then they delete it to make it look like they're even guilty. Oh my gosh, he deleted it. He must be guilty, right? This is another little tactic that they use that people think is like, oh, he deleted it. I'm catching him being guilty. They're trying to tell you that they're guilty by deleting it in the first place because they're 10 steps ahead. Because they're intel groups. They're intelligent. They're more intelligent than you because you're participating in their game and they're moving the pieces around to get you to move where they want you to move. So this story, again, is continuing to develop in regards to walkie-talkies being used. I can't emphasize this enough about how we trust in technology, how we allow technology, and how we need to go backwards with it. If this isn't a cry out for people who are asleep, who are obsessed with their technology, to start removing themselves from technology, I don't know what is. Take stories like this when they put them out there, and don't let them manipulate you into what's coming ahead. Pull yourself backwards and say, you know what? They're going to tell us that there's going to be a way, okay, cyber attacks and all that stuff, that they have a plan in the future to prevent that. Oh, they have a plan to make sure that all these devices don't get hacked. Why would you trust them with whatever their plan is? They're leading you into that plan. Instead, say, you know what? Life was a lot better before this. Life was a lot better. People were not depressed. People did not have anxiety and panic attacks and get consumed with fake news 24/7 to blur the lines of reality, right? People could start farming again, start doing things on their own again, take their power away by taking away the technology. So as of right now, me recording this, few people have already been claimed to be dead. Hundreds are injured as now walkie-talkie radios have exploded. First it was pagers, then it's walkie-talkies. Then, as I mentioned in this article, even the mentioning of payphones exploding. I find it a little hard to believe that there's payphones sitting out there, but maybe there are. But, what are the Hezbollah soldiers running to payphones? Wouldn't that be what they call a war crime, which is one of the biggest joke statements of all time? That these people go to war, then there's war crimes. Oh, there's like rules inside of a war. We're supposed to believe that they follow these rules, right? But wouldn't that be? Because can a civilian go and answer a landline phone? But these are probably things they're going to use to bait people into taking a side. Because remember, they're doing this deliberately by putting Israel's name on it. Israel's allowing themselves to be an enemy in this division, right? Because they want certain people to side with Israel and they want certain people to side with Palestine, right? And think about the people that they hate most, the people who follow Christ. They're all siding with who? With Israel, the apple of God's eye. They refuse to believe and read and learn about the synagogue of Satan. They just automatically will say, hey, they're doing what they have to do to protect themselves. They're doing the right thing. We stand with them. The other people say, we stand with them. They don't realize that they're all working together against us. I thank everybody for being here. Hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.